why? Why do I constantly find myself struggling in relationships, chasing after people who are not emotionally available, struggling to emotionally connect with people, finding relationships that end quickly, being overly obsessive or focused on relationships, kind of losing myself in relationships? Why? Why do I do that? Well, that's what we're going to talk about on today's video. My name is Heather, and I am a relationship and empowerment coach, and I love working with people to help them distinguish blind spots, the things that they don't know, that are getting in the way of them having the life, the love, and the relationships that they truly want. So welcome to my channel. Today, we're going to be talking about attachment theory, what it is, and why is it useful. Attachment theory, if you've never heard of it before, is basically a framework that can help you understand why you are the way you are in relationships. And it's kind of about how you can give and receive love. It's a really useful process, explanation, and understanding about how we're wired for connection and then how that wiring actually shows up in relationships. The history of attachment theory goes way back into the 1950s. Was based on how children and their primary caregivers would start connecting with each other, how they built relationships, and depending on how the primary caregiver showed up for the child or the parent showed up for the child, how that impacted the child and the way that they were able to form relationships and feel safe and secure inside of relationships with their parents. If you've ever wondered why you might be in relationships with people who are emotionally unavailable or attracted to people that you kind of have to chase, or why you struggle to actually connect with people, that maybe you feel it's really easy to get into relationships and then cut them off, or they feel really fun in the beginning and exciting in the beginning, and then on a dime they can kind of switch and you can feel really overwhelmed and frustrated or stressed out and just want to get away from the relationships. Or if you're the sort that feels like relationships can kind of become all-consuming and you spend all your time thinking about what's going wrong, why is this happening, what are they thinking, how are they feeling about me, all of that stuff can be better understood the more you understand about attachment styles and your attachment style. As research has evolved, it's been distinguished that there are 4 attachment styles. There's secure attachment, anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, as well as disorganized attachment. Each of these has a different flavor to them, and sometimes it can feel like there might be a little bit of overlap. We'll talk about that in a future video. Today, we're just going to focus on the high-level explanation of what they are and where they come from. As I mentioned, attachment styles are related to and influenced by your relationship, especially at a very young age, with your parents, how they responded to you and what your needs were. The more consistent they were, the more securely attached you'll be, and the less predictable or consistent they were, the more you'll be affected by and influenced in the anxious, avoidant, and disorganized attachment styles. Depending on which research you're looking at, you might see attachment styles being put into quadrants, like a box with quadrants, and being able to determine where you sit in each of the quadrants, or a spectrum. I've also seen it mapped out as a spectrum from disorganized to secure, with avoidant and anxious attachment sitting on the top of the spectrum. And it can start to get kind of confusing if you want to get into the weeds of this. My suggestion when you're thinking about attachment styles would be that you use it and think about it as a framework to help you understand yourself and how you react in relationships, and also how people that you're in relationships with, why they might be reacting the way that they're reacting. It's also when you understand more about what attachment styles are and how to improve the grip that they might have on you, they can improve your relationships. And so that can be also a practical way that this is used in figuring out how to improve your relationships. Let's do a quick rundown of each of the attachment styles, and we'll start with secure. Secure is the most balanced. It's the where you want to sit if you look at this as a spectrum or as a grid or whatever it is. It's where you would prefer to sit. People who have the secure attachment style tend to be more balanced with their emotions. They're more comfortable with emotions, including the negative ones, which means that when conflict arises in a relationship, they're more comfortable being able to stay in the conversation instead of being reactive and doing something like getting really angry or withdrawing from it. They also understand that disagreements and disappointments in relationships are really normal, and that there's opportunity to repair in relationships. So people who sit inside of that secure space tend to be more effective at being able to do that. They're also really good at self-soothing and regulating their nervous system, whether they're conscious of it or not. That's a skill set that they have that other people may not have learned. So when things start to get a little heated or uncomfortable, they would be more likely to be able to ground themselves and stay focused on the conversation instead of getting carried away by their emotions. The next style is anxious attachment style. And this one is exactly as it's stated, anxious. When they have an experience inside of a relationship, especially with disagreement or disappointment, they tend to become more anxious. Their nervous system gets dysregulated towards the anxieties end of that spectrum. They have a really hard time with rejection and they fear abandonment. In fact, that can be a big driver for them, trying to avoid abandonment. And when they have the experience of disappointment or disagreement inside of their relationship, they'll typically start to look at it like there's a problem with me, like I did something. So if you ever said to somebody with an anxious attachment style, we need to talk, they will spend the time from the moment they get that message from you, whether it's a text message, a voicemail message, an email, or like a verbal message, until the time you actually have the conversation, freaking out, trying to figure out what it was that they did wrong to upset you and whether or not that's actually put the relationship at risk. People with the anxious attachment style tend to be a little bit more reactive and have a harder time being able to discern what's actually happening in the relationship and can become then kind of clingy or needy. Those would be labels that they might receive in regards to their behavior, the less that they're getting the connection and attention that they want. Anxious attachment style craves connection and feels best when they have a connection with their partner and or in a relationship. And anytime there's a perceived disconnect happening, they start to get really worried or anxious. And so that's the basics of an anxious attachment style. The next attachment style is avoidant attachment style. And this one is, again, exactly as it's labeled. They avoid intimacy and connection. They are uncomfortable with that. They're uncomfortable with being vulnerable. They're uncomfortable with feelings. They're uncomfortable with emotions and an expression of emotion. And whenever there is a pull in the relationship for connection, so their partner is looking for connection, they can tend to feel overwhelmed and withdraw. They get dysregulated in their nervous system, but it looks different. Rather than being reactive, they might be more likely to shut down, freeze response. Stonewall would be a really common thing for them. They tend to react with defensiveness whenever they're confronted with a disagreement or the experience of disappointment. There's sort of a sense of, I knew it was going to go this way. You were going to blame me, or I was going to be disappointed. You were going to reject me, so I'm going to break up with you before you break up with me. That often happens. People with avoidant attachment style can also be accused of being able to turn their feelings on and off like a tap, that they'll get involved in relationships, things will seem like they're going really well. The other person will be starting to emotionally invest in the relationship with them, and then all of a sudden the avoidant attachment style will just disappear or remove themselves from the relationship. Sometimes it's ghosting, other times they might have a conversation with you, but either way they're the sort that would be more likely to remove themselves from the relationship because connection and intimacy can be really hard for them. Finally, we have disorganized attachment style. And again, the name explains what it is. It's just very disorganized. It would feel very chaotic, both being the person with disorganized attachment style and being on the receiving end of disorganized attachment style. It can feel very much like a come here, go away game. Like 1 minute I love you, I want to be around you, I can't get enough of you, and the next minute I just can't get away from you fast enough. And it can turn on a dime without explanation in both directions. And so just like that would be hard to relate to, it's hard to be the person who has that. It's really challenging for people with disorganized attachment style to regulate their own nervous system as well as their emotions, and it can sort of swing from one end of the spectrum of emotion to the other very quickly. We'll talk more about the attachment styles, how they show up in relationships, and how you can improve your own attachment style in future videos. But today we just wanted to give you a basic understanding of what they are like, and maybe a taste of how they might be affecting you or impacting your life. Basically, the bottom line for this, in regards to how it matters or why it matters, is it teaches you attachment styles or refer to how you give and receive love, how comfortable you are with that, and what your experience of that is. And if you think about it from the beginning, like the beginning of the development for you, when you were the blank canvas and came into the world as a baby, your natural tendency was to reach for connection. You're wired to do that. It's part of how you would literally survive. And over time, depending on how you were received by your parents when you would express a need, whether that was a dependency need like feeding, sleeping, changing, comforting, soothing, or like as you age, more like acknowledgement, approval, any of those validation, any of that kind of stuff, that when you have this natural urge, it's not met with comfort, it's actually met with some version of pain or rejection. And so you would develop then tendencies about that. Not going to get into that in this conversation. The basics are just that you would have this urge to have connection, and you would have learned that that's not a safe thing to have happen. So whenever you have the natural urge for the connection in the relationship, you will have your nervous system will like override that urge almost automatically, so that you can't even notice that it's happening, to give you the anxious attachment style behaviors, or to give you the avoidant attachment style behaviors, or the disorganized attachment style behaviors. So you have the urge for a connection, and you'll just reach for it, cling for it, freak out for it, really try to pull it to you. You'll have a natural urge for a connection, and you'll have learned that that's painful. So as soon as that urge comes up, you don't even recognize the urge anymore. You just feel the urge to pull away, feel the urge to shut down and shut off. It becomes that automatic. And so shifting this is actually related to the rewiring of the nervous system, starting to recognize that whenever you have any of the urges that would fit or belong under the different attachment styles, that there's a natural urge for connection happening, and that it's a normal thing. And when you're in relationships that are safe and secure, you'll get that need met. And so it's rewiring and reteaching yourself that when you have that urge, that if you pick relationships that are safe and secure, that you can actually have that need met in a loving, kind, comfortable way. There's lots of tools and resources out there to get you started on discovering more about attachment style. There's the tried and true book that's been out for a really long time called Attached by Dr. Levine. It's a really great explanation of especially the three main styles of attachment: the secure attachment style, anxious, and avoidant. Has really great information in there. It has links in that book as well to the original attachment styles test that was created by the original researcher, so you can go online and do that test for free. There's a newer book called Platonic by Dr. Marissa Franco, and that book is really helpful in looking at all the different ways that these different attachment styles will show up in relationships, including friendships. And so if you struggle with making relationships last, including friendships, this might be a really interesting book for you to consider looking into. As well, one of my favorite resources that I'll share with my clients often is a free attachment styles quiz by Dr. Diane Poole Heller, and I'll link all of this information below in the description box. She has a free attachment styles quiz that you can do on her website, and it'll actually give you your results as a pie chart, so you can see how each of the different attachment styles affects you, as opposed to just you are this one. And that can be really helpful when you're looking at trying to figure out how to solve this, how to rewire your nervous system in this way. She has a really great blog as well that has lots of great and reliable information about how to deal with attachment styles on her website, so highly recommend. As I mentioned, we just skimmed the surface in this conversation. We're just getting started. This video is really meant to just give you the high-level understanding. In future videos, we'll be looking at the different types of attachment styles in greater detail, as well as how they tend to be in relationships with each other, the good connections and maybe the not so good connections or the harder to manage connections, as well as how you can work towards rewiring yourself and moving more towards the secure attachment style, teaching yourself that it's okay when you have that natural urge to connect, that you can connect and that you're safe to do so. Thank you for watching. I hope you found value in this video. Please like and subscribe. It helps get the word out there, as well as keep you informed of when the next video comes out. As well, if you have any questions or comments, please leave those below. I'll be the one who's answering those, and I really love to hear from the people who watch my stuff. It's helpful, it's encouraging. As well, if you have any topics you'd like me to talk about, please feel free to share that information below. If you'd like to talk more about how you can improve your relationships, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. There's a link below in the description box where you can book your free sample session, and I would love to have a conversation with you and see what kind of difference we could make together. Thanks again for watching. I really look forward to speaking with you again soon. Take care.